The sun blazed down on the dusty frontier town of Dry Gulch, a place where hope and danger walked hand in hand. The wooden buildings creaked under the weight of time, their paint peeling like the dreams of those who had tried to make a life there. The townsfolk were hard-working and resilient, but they lived in constant fear of the outlaw gang that roamed the area, stealing cattle and causing chaos. Sheriff Dawson, the town's marshal, had always tried his best to maintain order. He was a strong man with a deep sense of justice, but even he knew that it was a tough battle. The outlaws were clever and ruthless, taking advantage of any weakness they could find. They wore their badges with mockery, taunting the very law they sought to undermine. Every day brought new challenges for the sheriff and his deputies. They patrolled the streets, searching for signs of trouble while trying to keep the peace among nervous citizens. Townspeople whispered about the latest robbery or fight in the saloon, their faces pale with anxiety. Drift Cowboy, a local rancher known for his quick thinking and bravery, often found himself caught between the law and the outlaws. He had witnessed too many friends suffer at the hands of criminals. With each passing day, he felt an unshakable urge to stand up for what was right, even when it seemed like hope was slipping away. Little did he know that today would bring him face to face with the danger he had always wanted to confront. Drift Cowboy was a tall, rugged man with sun-kissed skin and a weathered hat that shaded his keen blue eyes. He had spent years working on his ranch, but he was more than just a rancher. He was a protector of Dry Gulch. Known for his quick thinking and bravery, Drift earned the respect and admiration of the townsfolk. They often relied on him in times of need, knowing he would act without hesitation when danger lurked. With calloused hands and a heart full of compassion, Drift always took time to lend an ear to those who needed it. He could often be found at the general store, swapping stories with neighbors or helping an elder carry their goods home. He knew everyone in town, from the cheerful children playing in the dusty streets to the weary farmers laboring under the relentless sun. For many, he was a guiding light in a world filled with shadows. But Drift's heart weighed heavy with the thought of the outlaw gang. Their presence threatened everything the townspeople held dear. Each time he witnessed fear in the eyes of his friends, it fueled his determination to stand up against evil. Little did he know that today would put those values to the test as circumstances would force him into action like never before. Drift Cowboy's courage and compassion were about to lead him on a path filled with unexpected challenges and heroic moments. The afternoon was tense in Dry Gulch as a cloud of unease settled over the town. Sheriff Dawson had made a stand against the notorious outlaw gang, their faces grim and full of malice. He demanded they leave, his voice strong and commanding as he challenged their presence. But rather than retreat, the gang merely laughed, mocking him with their jeers as they made clear they would not back down. The confrontation escalated quickly, words turning to shouts, and then to violence. As tempers flared, Sheriff Dawson felt the weight of the situation bearing down on him. In an effort to protect his town and assert his authority, he pushed himself too hard. It wasn't long before he faltered, clutching his chest as he fell heavily to the ground. The townsfolk gasped in shock, eyes wide with fear. Drift Cowboy, who had been nearby tending to a delivery at the general store, rushed toward the commotion. Time seemed to slow as he saw the sheriff crumple on that hot, dusty street. Urgency pulsed through him like wildfire. His heart raced as he knelt beside Dawson, assessing the bleeding and struggling man with concern. "Someone get water," he called urgently, but deep down he knew they needed more than that. The sheriff's ability to hold back danger for them was fading fast, and it was up to Drift now to haul him away from this chaos, to safety, where he could get help before it was too late. Drift Cowboy knelt beside Sheriff Dawson, feeling the heat radiating from the man's pale face. He quickly assessed the situation, knowing time was of the essence. With a surge of determination, he gently lifted the sheriff's upper body, cradling him as best he could. "I've got you, Sheriff. Just hold on," he whispered, his voice steady despite the chaos surrounding them. The townsfolk watched in a mix of fear and admiration as Drift hoisted Dawson over his shoulder, refusing to let go of the bond they had forged through countless encounters over the years. The sheriff had always been there to protect the town, and now it was Drift's turn to return that loyalty. Every step was a struggle as Drift navigated through the dust and debris, but he pressed on, driven by desperation and courage. The weight of the sheriff felt heavy, but the thought of leaving him behind was unbearable. As he neared the barn, Drift's mind raced with thoughts of the outlaw gang lurking nearby. He could almost feel their eyes watching him. Suddenly, a shout erupted from behind, sending a chill down his spine. The gang had spotted him. "Get him!" one of them yelled, brandishing a weapon. Drift's heart pounded in his chest as urgency surged through him. He pushed himself faster, his determination unwavering. The stakes were high, not just for Sheriff Dawson but for the entire town. He had to reach safety before it was too late. As Drift Cowboy hurried toward the barn, a menacing presence loomed behind him. The outlaw gang, led by a towering figure named Black Jake, stood in a small group, their smirks betraying their cruel intentions. Each member wore a spare badge taken from an old marshal, a cruel joke that mocked the very authority they sought to undermine. The shiny metal glinted in the sun, adding to the terrifying aura they exuded. Black Jake enjoyed playing the role of the villain. His dark eyes scanned the town with cold amusement as he strutted with an air of arrogance, knowing the fear he instilled in everyone around him. The gang was known for their violent ways, and tales of their misdeeds traveled far and wide. They delighted in chaos and thrived on creating panic wherever they went. Behind Jake were his henchmen, grimy-faced men with scars across their cheeks and rough laughter that sent shivers down spines. They leaned against wooden posts, exchanging taunts about the sheriff's collapse, their laughter echoing ominously through the silent streets. With every mocking comment, they made it clear that they enjoyed striking fear into the hearts of good folks. As Drift felt his heart race, he could sense that getting Sheriff Dawson to safety would not be easy. The gang was closing in, and their disregard for justice only heightened his urgency. He knew if they succeeded in blocking his path, it could mean disaster for not just the sheriff but for all of Dry Gulch. As Drift Cowboy approached the barn, his heart pounded in rhythm with the frantic urgency of his thoughts. He could feel Sheriff Dawson's weight growing heavier on his shoulder, each step a struggle against the rising panic in his chest. The barn loomed ahead, a sanctuary he hoped would shield them from the chaos outside. But as he reached for the door, dread washed over him. It was barred tight. Drift's eyes widened as he saw the gang members lounging casually against the wooden slats, their faces twisted into cruel smirks. Black Jake stood at the forefront, arms crossed, a gleam of satisfaction in his eyes as he watched Drift's futile approach. "Going somewhere, rancher?" he jeered, his voice dripping with mockery. The other outlaws cackled, their laughter echoing in the stillness of the afternoon. Desperation surged within Drift as he banged on the door, his voice rising above the mocking laughter. "Help! Get me in!" He strained against Dawson's weight, panic fueling his determination to break through. But the gang remained unmoved, finding joy in his struggle. Drift knew they would not allow easy entry, and he felt time slipping away like sand through his fingers. The stakes were impossibly high, the sheriff needed medical attention, and with each moment that passed, Drift felt the looming threat of those ruthless outlaws closing in. With courage flaring in his heart, he searched for another way inside, knowing that failure was not an option if he wanted to protect his town and save the man who had always stood for justice. Drift Cowboy's mind raced as he assessed the situation. The mocking laughter of the outlaws echoed in his ears, and he knew he had to think fast. He carefully shifted Sheriff Dawson's weight to one side, trying to keep him stable while scanning the barn for an alternative entrance. That's when he noticed a small window near the back of the barn, just big enough for him to squeeze through. A plan began to form in his mind. "I can get in through there," he thought, but it would mean leaving Dawson momentarily exposed. Drift quickly searched the ground for anything he could use. Spotting a sturdy wooden crate nearby, he dragged it over and stacked it under the window. With a firm nod to himself, he gently laid the sheriff down on the ground, making sure he was safe and still while he climbed. As Drift hoisted himself onto the crate, adrenaline surged through him. He took one last look around, The outlaws were still reveling in their power, unaware of his next move. With a final push, he pulled himself up and managed to fit through the window, landing quietly inside the barn. Once inside, Drift scanned for supplies and found a few medical items left behind by previous deputies. He quickly gathered what he needed and prepared to open the door for Dawson while keeping an eye on any signs of the gang outside. His heart raced not just with fear, but with hope. If he could act swiftly enough, maybe they could find safety after all. As Drift Cowboy pushed open the barn door, adrenaline coursed through him. He emerged ready to confront the outlaw gang, who still stood in their smug circles, laughing loudly and waving their badges like trophies of their misdeeds. Drift's heart pounded as he faced Black Jake, who met his gaze with cold amusement. Well, look who's decided to join us," Jake sneered, stepping forward, his gang fanning out behind him, ready for trouble. "What's the matter, rancher? Think you can save the day?" Drift squared his shoulders, feeling the weight of Sheriff Dawson's fate resting on his resolve. "You don't have to do this," he replied firmly. "You can walk away and leave this town in peace." The laughter ceased, and a tense silence filled the air. The outlaws exchanged glances, some flashing uncertain looks, while others leaned closer to Jake for guidance. It was clear that Drift's words were striking a chord within them, even if only slightly. Jake narrowed his eyes, frustration brewing beneath his bravado. "Peace? You think we're scared of you?" he barked back. "This town is ours for the taking." His voice echoed off the barn walls as he stepped closer, fists clenched at his sides. "If you truly want power," Drift said, taking a step forward himself, "then you know deep down what you're doing is wrong." The challenge hung in the air between them like a sharp knife. Every soul watching felt the weight of that moment. A standoff not just between men but over ideals of justice and morality. Jake hesitated, his anger bubbling below the surface but uncertainty washing over him as he considered Dive's words. With both men standing firm in their beliefs, one advocating for hope and goodness while the other championed chaos, a decision loomed ahead that could alter the very fabric of Dry Gulch forever. As tension hung thick in the air, Drift Cowboy decided to use the moment to his advantage. Rather than solely relying on words to sway the gang, he quickly formulated a clever tactic. "If you're so powerful," he taunted Black Jake, "why not prove it? Show everyone what kind of men you really are." The gang members shifted uneasily, their bravado wavering under Drift's challenge. He could see that Jake was struggling with his pride and the growing uncertainty among his men. It was exactly the opening Drift needed. "How about a little wager? If you're as tough as you claim, let's have it out. You and me." Jake's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, it seemed as if he might take the bait. Drift's heart raced as he sensed the shift in the atmosphere. If Jake accepted, it could distract the gang long enough for him to execute his plan. But Drift wasn't finished yet. "First, let me show you what true courage looks like," he continued, pointing to a nearby crate filled with old farm tools. "If you think you can scare me, how about we have a target practice? If you hit the bullseye, I'll walk away and leave this town to you. But if I hit it first, you leave for good." The gang members hesitated, exchanging glances filled with uncertainty. The stakes had changed, and with them came a flicker of doubt in Jake's confidence. As Drift prepared for the shot, he knew this gamble could turn the tide in their favor, not just for himself but for Sheriff Dawson and all of Dry Gulch. As Drift Cowboy steadied himself, he took a deep breath and aimed at the target. The world around him seemed to fade away, leaving only the sound of his heartbeat in his ears. With a swift pull of the trigger, the bullet flew straight and true, striking the bullseye with a satisfying thud. Cheers erupted from the townsfolk hidden nearby, their spirits lifting at the sight of Drift's aim. The cheer rang through the barn as Jake's expression morphed from smug confidence to incredulous disbelief. Just as Drift had hoped, the gang's resolve began to crumble. "You said we could walk away if you hit it," one of the outlaws called out nervously, glancing toward Jake. The challenge had shifted. Now it was Jake who seemed cornered. Drift stepped forward, his voice strong but calm. "You got what you wanted. Now keep your word." The gang hesitated and exchanged uneasy looks before Jake clenched his jaw, realizing that his bravado had backfired. Slowly, he motioned for his gang to retreat. "Let's get out of here," he grumbled, directing his men to leave. With the immediate danger past, Drift rushed back to Sheriff Dawson, who was regaining consciousness. Together with the townsfolk's help, they lifted him onto a makeshift stretcher and brought him inside the barn for treatment. As they worked together to stabilize him, a sense of relief washed over Drift. That day in Dry Gulch marked not just a victory against outlaws but also a testament to friendship and bravery. The bonds forged among friends made them stronger than any gang could ever be. As peace returned to their town, Drift vowed always to stand for what was right, knowing that together they could face any challenge that came their way.